Is there a tool, trick, hack, or something that maybe people can go on Monday and try to do one little step?
There's no magic tool.
How do you gear up for something like that?
Bringing people together to work on a common topic anywhere is even today a very, very difficult thing to do. It's just the way we humans are, right?
Like everybody's trying to figure out how to work with business.
Right.
It makes a lot of sense to have mentorship in that sense.
You find the CEO in a lift and don't just say hello, good morning and move on.
Great place to start.
Great place to start.
Yeah,
And I think that's when people really bet on you.
An example of that in your own career, like where
absolutely.
maybe you jumped into something that you weren't meant to be doing, but it was a good thing.
Dr. Agarwal used to tell me that HR is too important to be left to HR people. Really.
Not sure if that's a compliment.
I used to call it a backhanded compliment.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Close the Loop. Really excited to have a conversation with Group CHRO of Puravankara, Ravi Kumar today. We're going to talk about a topic that I think will help our audience, which is how to kind of grow in your career as an HR, how to become a stronger, more superpowered HR, moving from somebody who's more execution focused to somebody who can be more strategic within the company. Ravi's not somebody, I think, who lives in theory. I think we're going to talk about real stories and reflections today. So really excited to have Ravi with us today. Thanks so much for joining, Ravi.
Thank you, Ryan, and I think pleasure to be here. And this is a topic close to my heart. I love to say what you said. I'm a practitioner, and and there are people who always ask me, "Have you always been in HR?"
Yeah.
Yes, I have always been in HR, and I don't know if it's good or bad, but I've always been in HR.
Yeah.
And it's I think now 28 years. Different organizations, different industries, and I dare say that the issues, the concerns, the challenges still remain the same, and we'll talk a little bit about that.
One of the things that really stood out to me is your career journey has been extremely diverse from a industry and size of company perspective. So maybe if you can just quickly walk everyone through that.
Sure. Very quickly. So started with Larsen & Toubro, L&T as it's known nowadays, and
kind of a big company.
Kind of a big company. Large manufacturing base, etc. And in fact, I cut my teeth in a manufacturing setup inside L&T. It was a factory manufacturing, heavy engineering stuff. Very interesting setup. And L&T is a company that teaches you processes, right? So it could be HR processes, it could be manufacturing processes, but very interesting stuff. That's where I really learned my fundamentals. I still thank L&T for that. I also spent a lot of time in Saint-Gobain, or Saint-Gobain as it's known. French, but Indian origins. We started with a company called Granville Norton Limited. Cutting tools, then moved on to glass and various other products. Very interesting again, different revenue generating model as compared to L&T. And of course a bit of the French spice that was added in terms of people from France also helping us with our work here in India. So I learned a lot of this stuff from the French as well when I was there. Then moved on to Roche, and I think that's been a 15-year journey, very long time, different countries, several different roles as well. Healthcare, as you can imagine, even today is a fast-growing business. Very different kind of an approach in India, especially European companies had a very different approach. And I think we also evolved. I've also worked in the Middle East during that point of time, a bit in Singapore as well. And working in some of these different multicultural environments gives you a very different perspective on HR as well. So people, HR, etc. And of course worked with Page Industries, one of the darlings of the stock market and the industry in retail as well as manufacturing. Brands like Jockey, Speedo, etc. Very large organization, 23,000 people, different dynamic altogether.
And completely different kind of employee base.
Absolutely. Different colors as well. And therefore, now in Puravankara, of course, again, a very different industry. I've sort of challenged myself that I won't be in the same industry, whenever I move. So I just started here, very interesting times. And, the real estate industry in India is growing very fast. And of course, we are looking at several things that, organizations can do. At Puravankara as well, we are looking at several things that we can do for our customers. So I think happy to be part of the journey now here.
It's such a privilege. You have gotten to see different shapes and sizes and forms of companies. I mean, I think, a lot of people, they kind of want that opportunity to like really be able to pick and choose and learn and take best practices. And I think part of that also comes from mentors. So I know we wanted to talk about this, which is, has there been, all of us on our career journeys have some mentors, some professionals who really inspire us. You've obviously had this long kind of upward trajectory in the HR leadership kind of space, career. Has there been one person who's really kind of touched your career and changed your trajectory?
Oh, yes, absolutely. I think, it's not just one, but I've had several mentors. I still have several mentors. And, if I may dare say, it's not just HR mentors. I've had the privilege of working with several CEOs and managing directors who even today happen to be my mentors. On the HR side, of course, I've had the privilege of having Indrajit Sengupta, who used to work for HCCB earlier, Mahindra, Johnson & Johnson, very well-known figure in the HR, community. Yeah. And I've had the benefit of having him as a senior from college. Several years spent in college, etc. So, he's been very, very supportive of my journey. Yeah. And I think what I've learned from him, Ryan, is very clearly 2-3 aspects. One is, of course, ask the right questions. Before you make any decision in your career, it could be a college, it could be an organization. Ask the right questions. And the second thing that he's always been, encouraging me to do is look at what I need to, learn. Whenever I move somewhere, whenever I take up a new role, even within the organization, it's always about what am I going to learn and what am I going to deliver next. Yeah. And I think he's been wonderful as a mentor, asking sometimes some of these difficult questions, saying, why do you want to do that? Why do you want to take up that role in Dubai, for example? What impact are you going to have? And I think all of us need such mentors.
So you asked some guiding questions before you took that step.
Absolutely. And I've sort of picked it up from Inder, and, if anyone asks me as well to, suggest something, I actually tell them these questions, and, I think people can really pick that up. So really helped me a lot. I must also talk about one of my managing directors at Roche, a gentleman called Dr. Bhuvnesh Agarwal, now retired, based in Germany, but again, it's not about HR. It's also about leadership, and this is one gentleman who's taught me that you need to take bets on people, right? Either you take bets on team members, or you take bets on other people who are there to help you grow. And the other thing was always about humility. Yeah. I mean, this is something that I've learned from most of my mentors. Yeah. You have to be humble. It's always about, I may not have all the answers, I may not know 100% about this topic, but can I ask the right questions? Can I bring in the right people? Can I be humble enough to say, I don't know, I want to learn? Yeah. And I think then that helps you grow in your own organization or in your community.
And I think a lot of folks, when they kind of go out early in their careers, especially, and seek mentors, it's usually sort of within the same career path. When did you realize, I think, that mentorship from outside of maybe your role functional area would be helpful?
Right. Yeah, I think it somewhere on the way, and I think what happens with HR roles, and I think I've been privileged, is that you work with a lot of people beyond the function, right? Yeah. Dr. Agarwal used to tell me that HR is too important to be left to HR people. I still follow that, really. Yeah. Really.
Not sure if that's a compliment.
I used to call it a backhanded compliment, but he was very clear that it's every manager's topic. Right? It's you might be an expert on it, but you are not the expert on it. There are several people, leaders who are salespeople, who could be logistics, finance people, but they are great HR people as well. Right. And I think that humility, once it comes in, I think, you'll be able to pick it up and, take it to the next level. And I think this is something that I've been following, looking at it from that point of view in terms of what can I learn?
Yeah, that's huge.
What can I do differently with functions beyond HR, with functions which are impacting business? And how can I impact business?
It seems like a super important realization to have early on. Like, everybody's trying to figure out how to work with business. Right. It makes a lot of sense to have mentorship on that side. Right. I think the other question that's on a lot of folks in the HR function's mind is, how can I move from, it feels like my day-to-day is very execution focused. I'm kind of a driver of processes that already exist, to being more of like a business partner,
Right.
more of a strategic lens. How do you suggest folks kind of navigate that journey, especially
Right.
folks in the early mid stage of their career?
Right. Yeah, this is a difficult one because I think this is also about how roles are structured.
Yeah.
And a role could be that it's more administrative and less strategic.
Right.
But I think there is a sort of no magic formula. But I think one thing that all of us can do, and I did it quite early, is jump onto opportunities which allow you to take up strategic responsibilities. So while you do the administrative stuff, and which is fine, we all do it. I do it even today. There are of course parts of my role which are still administrative. Absolutely okay. Good to do that till AI takes over. But I think it's early in your career. I'm sure there are opportunities that we all need to look out for. So number one, look for mentors or sponsors within the organization who see the spark in you and are able to take a bet on you and say, listen, come and join my cross-functional team, or come and join us for a few months maybe, or a few hours, and let's see what you can contribute.
Right.
And when that word spreads, you'll also be on some other teams tomorrow and maybe in other roles where one can actually contribute on a strategic level. So I think one is to find the right sponsors. Second is to have the courage to say, I'm going beyond what I'm going to do, and let me take it up, right? And maybe this is a conversation with a manager, it could be a conversation with a sponsor, it could be a conversation with, let's say, you find the CEO in a lift and, don't just say hello, good morning, and, move on. Use the opportunity to have an elevator pitch and say that, listen, I'm willing to take on a little more, and, at some point, can I come over and have this discussion with you?
Yeah.
I'd like to do much more. And I think that's when people really bet on you, and they see that you're ready to take on much more, and then that could be a strategic topic that you're taking up. So one has to do that, otherwise we'll all be in administrative roles. It's not just HR folks, it could be finance folks, it could be supply chain folks.
So really, I mean, at the core, it's about reaching out to other folks, letting them know that you want to take on more, and seizing that opportunity. And do you have maybe a story where, or an example of that in your own career, like where
absolutely.
maybe you jumped into something that you weren't meant to be doing, but it was a good thing?
True, and it was very early in my career. I think this was L&T, and those days we were creating a lot of policies. Like I said, L&T is a process company. And I think Mr. Naik was that time in the factory, and he was a CEO, he wasn't chairman at that point of time. And he would spend a lot of time in the factory in Powai in Mumbai, and that's where I was placed as well. So this is the time they were putting together cross-functional teams, right? And on different topics. Somebody was working on a competency matrix. There were a set of people working on a, let's say, career planning or a career mapping kind of a concept. And all of them had to come together at some point, and the company would implement that. A very inclusive atmosphere, and it had all people who are very senior, in the organization, BGMs, GMs, etc. And this is the time I went to my manager and I said, listen, I'm just 1 year in this organization, just a management trainee that just got confirmed, but this seems to be a very interesting thing that you're doing on career pathing and job rotations, etc. I'd like to get onto that. And he said, okay, are you sure? Because it involves a lot of work, it's a lot of running around, and you're the junior most. So you'll have to take notes and make the minutes of the meeting, right?
Great place to start.
Great place to start. Let me do this. And he said, you'll have to set up the meetings, because these are going to be meetings. And those days, no calendars. You had to call all 5 people on the team, find out when they're free.
Some real work there.
Some real ground level administrative work as well. And I think this really happened, and it took off. There are people who took notice of me as well. And I think being on that team with a lot of these senior folk, and also trying to have my voice there. And many a times I would be snubbed because, oh, well, when did you join? It was last year, right? So we are talking about a whole legacy of L&T, and, we're planning it in a certain way. And I think this, what really helped was the last presentation, which was made to Mr. Naik. It was taken to the leadership team. And that's the time he noticed me, and he said, listen, who's this young boy here? And, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself before we start the presentation? It was very interesting. He was very keen to know. which college I'd come from, what am I doing, and what are you doing on this team, right? And what have you learned? And I think that was very, very interesting.
So cool.
And I realized that, if you volunteer yourself, you might get into a spot of trouble in certain situations, but there's a payoff. You make a benefit out of it, you learn something new. You meet people in the organization that you would not have met otherwise. Maybe you learn about other functions. Maybe you learn about how business runs better. If you're in some of these, or you get an inroad into some of these areas. And this has continued later on, and that was just one example. I mean, at Page, for example, I was also doing environment, health and safety in addition to HR as well. I mean,
interesting.
It wasn't part of the JD, and the MD asked if I would like to do it. I said, why not? Let me do this. And this is nearly 20 years after I started, right? So I still would love to take on things which are not my domain. And I think that really helps.
But doing new things is hard, right?
Yes.
I mean, when somebody asks you, when your MD asks you to take on this big thing, not the L&T story is different very early in your career, but this is much later. You're a senior professional, probably a ton on your plate already, and then it's like, okay, here's this other thing. How do you gear up for something like that? Like, what are your first few steps to even decide, like, is it right to take something like this on or not? Like, how did you evaluate it?
Absolutely. No, I think one has to evaluate. I mean, it's not about just jumping into something and saying I'm interested, and then you realize that you can't deliver.
Right.
I think one is in terms of data. There's a lot of data available today, and I think it's also available to you if you ask for it. It doesn't come to you because you're not part of that responsibility, but I think it's good to look at data in terms of what's happening, to that function, to that part of the organization, and being clear about what is required over there, right? So I think it's always good to ask a question saying, what's the problem statement there, and why do you want someone to take over? And do you think I could do something better with that? And what do you think? So I think it's great to ask those questions to people who understand that function, right? In this case, let's say environment, health, safety.
You took your time to really understand.
Yes, to understand that data, and second is people. I was lucky that there was a set of people already working there, and when you jump in, these are the experts, right? So these are qualified engineers who have been working on this for a long time, and that's when you actually get a lot of stuff from them in terms of how that works, what makes it tick, how do we make an impact on the environment, for example. And if it's not my topic, this is something that I can learn from those individuals. So when you bring those individuals together and say, listen, I know zero about this. Can you tell me some more? And if they do, and they will do, most people like to talk about their own roles, right?
If you ask the right questions.
Yes, if you ask the right questions. And then you can actually pick it up and say, listen, I can make an impact here, and let me take it. That's how I would do it, and that's how I would recommend everyone do it.
I mean, it seems like a big thread is like you've just remained intellectually curious about the things that you get into, and so you seek out the right people, you seek out the right data, you ask the right questions. So I think that's very transferable.
And of course, I must add that the environment has to be conducive to that. I know a lot of people listening to us today could say that my organization doesn't allow that. Or there could be managers and teams that don't want others to come in. It can happen. But yes, I think there's no harm in trying, and like you said, there's no harm in being intellectually curious. And if there are gaps in certain teams offering that, let me fill that gap and do this for you, then I think the opportunity also presents itself.
Yeah, makes sense. All of your stories, professional experiences have been across such different industries, different sizes of companies. But kind of despite all that variety, is there something that you see as just like a common pitfall that maybe early to mid-career HR folks make, where it doesn't matter if you're at a French MNC or a domestic firm of different sizes. Like, where do HRs tend to make that error in career planning and taking next bigger steps?
It doesn't matter which industry you're in. So I think a lot of us, including myself, have made these mistakes. One is, of course, getting too comfortable with whatever you know in terms of skills and capabilities. I think like everyone else, HR folks also need to keep upgrading, reskilling, upskilling, etc. And there are two ways of doing this. One, of course, like I said, move into something different, take the challenge. A lot of us, and I found this in my own teams as well, and I found it in myself as well, saying, listen, I do this very well within HR, let me stay with that. Nothing wrong with that, but you're not going to grow, right? And the other aspect is about going beyond HR as well, right? It's a cliched thing, we say you should learn the business. I say it is good to understand how the company makes money, right? And if you understand that, and there are different ways of making money, if you are able to understand that, that's a fundamental that will stay with you wherever you go. And I think a lot of HR folks probably make this, error of judgment in not trying to understand that and saying, I'm a people's person, I know how to deal with people, there are people challenges, leadership challenges, and I'm here to help you do that. No. If you don't understand the fabric of the organization, you're not going to contribute and you're not going to grow. So I think I would really focus on these two areas.
People say, there's the physics of the business.
Yes.
Right? Like the laws of matter here. Right. And so it's like until you know that, it's going to be very hard to take actions. And I think that makes a ton of sense. What are maybe 2 to 3 things that you feel are the qualities now that are super important, right? I think a lot of people say whatever has gotten us here won't get us there. And I think especially now with AI changing the face of the workplace, not just in HR, every function. What are those 2 to 3 things that you think can future-proof somebody?
Yeah, very interesting. We did some work around this, sometime at Roche, and it was not just for HR folks, but for the entire organization. And I've actually picked that up, and I've tried to use that everywhere with my team, my colleagues.
You guys started that pretty early, then.
Yes. We actually put it in a framework, which was called an ECG framework, because it was a healthcare company, and ECG was a little easy to remember. So it was just about having 3 different mindsets which will hold good for the future, despite any disruption, despite any leadership challenges, etc. We called it an entrepreneurial mindset, a collaborative mindset, and a growth mindset. I mean, it sounds cliched, but very clearly that if I own whatever I'm doing, and that's your entrepreneurial mindset, I'm actually going to succeed at it, despite any disruption, despite any concerns, despite any challenges. Same thing with collaboration, because no role exists on its own. We all have to work with someone else. I mean, I have to work with my finance colleagues very closely. I have to work with my sales colleagues very closely. And I think the earlier all of us in HR understand this, the better it is. So I think the collaborative mindset is the second thing I would say. And the last thing is about growth mindset is, again, what you and I spoke about, having a learner's mindset, thinking that, this is fine, but can I do this in a better way? Even saying that, can I do away with this? And will that impact employees and, customers in and outside the organization? And if I can do that, then I have a growth mindset, right? So I think an ECG kind of a mindset is something that's really
great. We do say frameworks in separate cliche, but they work, and people need mnemonics to remember things. So I think I actually really like that a lot. If you were to choose any of the 3 of those, right? Is one of them harder? Do you think, especially within the HR function, do you think the HR function is grinding their teeth on one of those?
No, I think the collaborative piece is something that all of us struggle with, not just within the function, but also outside. And I think bringing people together to work on a common topic anywhere is even today a very, very difficult thing to do. It's just the way we humans are, right? I mean, my priorities are a little different from yours, and my strengths are a little different from yours. So if I can understand your strengths, and I can understand his strengths, and my strengths, and I use them in a complementary fashion, then I can get people together, and then we collaborate better. I think HR folks, in the nature of their duties as well, have to understand this much, much better. We have a long way to go as HR folks to, build collaboration within the function, within the organization. And I think we are best placed to do it as well, but we are not doing it. And I still feel there's a long way to go there.
Is there a favorite tool, trick, hack, or something that maybe people can go on Monday and try to do one little step so that they can create a bit more of a collaborative environment?
Well, okay, that's a difficult one, but there's no magic tool. But I would say the first thing comes from listening. I need to understand you much better, so therefore I need to listen to you first. It's about you first, then me. And if I listen to you, if I listen to you, then I'm able to pick on your strengths and say, look, Ryan has these strengths. And I've identified them because I've listened to him a couple of times and I've understood this is how he or she operates. Now, based on that, I should be able to also share with Ryan saying, these are my strengths and this is how I operate, right? As a real example, it could be, it could be that, it's about knowing myself and knowing you. And then I think the collaboration becomes far better. And, there are things that I should not step on your toes as well. I should know that. You have your boundaries. If I know your boundaries, then I think the collaboration is a little easier. But you should also know my boundaries.
That's helpful.
Right? Yeah. So in theory, it sounds great. But I mean, let's take an example. So let's say there is a sales colleague and there is let's say a supply chain colleague, and they are both, bound together at the hip because there's a customer who's asking for something. It has to be delivered. So there is a sales pitch and then there is a delivery, right? So supply chain guys come in. Now, the common purpose is to deliver something to the customer.
Right.
But let's say these two don't get along for whatever reasons, right? The strength of the salesperson is, putting down in very clear terms how this would benefit a customer, and therefore this product has to be delivered. Customer says, I need it in a few days. And this is what the salesperson is also good at, right? Talking about, how it will benefit you and how we will deliver, and as an organization, how are we going to? So that's the strength of the salesperson. But the supply chain person is a process person, right? In most cases, would like to follow a process and ensure that the product with full quality is delivered to the customer, also in time, but not necessarily in the same time that the salesperson promised, right? So now how do we get these two people together? It's good to understand what are the strengths of the salesperson. Very easy here because, it's very apparent. On the other side, it's for the salesperson to understand what are the strengths of the, let's say, the supply chain person. It's probably an arranger, someone who likes to follow a process and, is very clear about going from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4.
Right.
And if a salesperson wants the person to go straight from point number 1 to point 4 and go to point 5 and deliver it to the customer, it's not going to happen. So if both of us know, as a supply chain person and a salesperson, know these strengths and limitations of each other, then I think we can work far, far better, right? We can have these conversations on how to collaborate. All right, you go from 1 to 5. How long does that take normally? Can we shorten this time? Right. Is there some way to do it that you don't go from 1 to 5 directly? Go from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 because that's what you do best. But can we do something to reduce the time period? And it's a collaborative discussion. In the end, I want to supply to the customer on day number 5. Right? So I think if this kind of approach is used, and it can be used even within HR teams, it can be used in any other team. I think it works everywhere. I've used these strengths concepts with my team. And if I know that, HR person number 1 has these strengths and HR person number 2 has some other strengths, I would speak very differently to both. How I, help number 1 versus how I help number 2 could be very, very different based on these strengths. So
it seems like what's missing is people coming to that interaction, being very intentional about this.
Yes,
we come from 2 different places. I'm going to approach this conversation in a specific way because we come from 2 different places. Right? I think and I'm coming here to build a bridge, not to get my work done.
Yeah, you put it very well, and I don't think most of us understand it that way, right? I'm always on an agenda. When I come to you, I need this to be delivered to the customer in full. So can we do this OTIF thing later, and can you please deliver it today?
Right, and I'm primed to be disappointed, frustrated when I get anything other than that.
Absolutely, and when I'm asked why it's not delivered, the answer is that the supply chain person is unable to deliver it. It doesn't work that way, because I've not possibly understood the point of view of the supply chain person. I've not harnessed the strengths of the supply chain.
In the ECG framework, I get why C is very difficult.
Right.
But no, I think that's a good framework. I think try to show up to those interactions, encourage your team to show up to those interactions, knowing that, we are building a bridge here. Every conversation is a chance to build a bridge. You've obviously seen so much in your career. Is there maybe like a call to action or one thing that you want to leave?
Well, I think, the learner mindset is something that I really, practice on a day-to-day basis. And, that's the reason why I'm here today as well. I mean, we were talking about the last session we had with Loop, and it was all about, what I learned there is what I ended up telling you, right? Because that's the way I see it. It's I think, very important for HR folks today. Let's go beyond what we do on a day-to-day basis. Understand what makes the wheels of the business run, understand, what the customer wants. And if we do that, we are going to be great HR people.
Yeah.
That's the first I would say priority for everybody.
So big, yeah.
And you keep a learner's mindset. This is going to happen. Number two, of course, is I would say don't take yourself too seriously. The entire weight of the organization is not on the HR person. I think a lot of us tend to think that way. It's not so. I'll go back to what Dr. Hual told me. It was about HR is too important to be left to HR people. So I think we need to accept that.
Right.
And understand that every leader is a people person, and we are here to support that leader as well. So I think we go with that mindset, and of course you have an ECG framework. I think if I can leave people with those three, I think that would be wonderful. I practice it on myself even today. I'm not perfect. As you can see, I'm still moving industries and trying to learn something different. And I'm enjoying it. I think you need to enjoy that as well.
Well, it doesn't seem like you're moving industries because you're trying to figure it out. It seems like you've figured some things out. And fortunately for all of us, we've gotten to hear about some of those things today. So
pleasure.
I feel like we could keep chatting forever, but I think this is a great kind of start to the conversation. Thanks so much, Ravi, for joining, and hopefully you can come back on sometime.
Sure. Thank you so much. The pleasure is mine, and I have a few takeaways from the discussion as well. But of course, I'll save it for later, and we'll talk about it again. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Take care.
Thank you. Take care.
That was fun.
Yeah, absolutely.